is
Well,
still
I
there.
think, doesn't Corey Bracken play? Corey and,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Corey and,
Oh yeah. Can't miss Corey.
Bracken, yeah.
Oh, you know, you could not listen.
Please rise for the presentation of colors and national anthem. Thank you.
Trey.
Let us pray. Our God, our Father, we are grateful for your blessings upon us. Thank you for allowing us to live in a nation where we have the freedom, God, to serve you and to serve our fellow man. We also, God, thank you for the liberty of being able to come and to remember those who have passed on before us. And we thank you, God, for just allowing us the opportunity to reflect on a great day that has been ever etched in our memories and in our heart. We ask, God, that you will bless this occasion for which we have gathered, and we thank you for the blessings that you have placed upon each and every one of us. And so now, God, we ask that you will bless this event and help us to always remember that we focus on you, our God and our Creator. Bless us is our desire. Bless us, this is our prayer. In Christ Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Welcome and be seated. Welcome to the National Honor and Steel Heritage Museum. I'm Scott Houston, the president, and welcome to the Coatesville Remembers September 11th ceremony. I would like to thank the Parksburg VFW for presentation of colors and the Lukens Band for the national anthem, as well as Reverend Randall Harris for the invocation. Today is the 13th anniversary of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center in New York, the Pentagon, and Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania. So we will be marking the time that incidents happened during that day. The 4 bells for the flights crashing, and then a bell each for the towers coming down, the north and south towers coming down. Those bells will be rung by the Girl Scouts. And each of those bells will then be followed by a moment of silence and then a musical reflection. We're happy to have the Lukens Band here, the Coatesville Area Senior High School, Redmen and Belltones, and I believe Kevin Pierce, retired Commandant of the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks in Emeryville. We will also have Jim Ziegler be presenting. The South Brandywine Middle School has done a project to reflect on September 11th and what it means to them, and so we'll be making a presentation about that. We're honored to have many distinguished officials and public officials speaking today from Coatesville, Chester County, and the region. So we look forward to that. We'll get to that in a little bit. And Gene DiOrio will be emceeing today's event and introducing our speakers and featured guests. But we're really happy to have today Peter Miller, formerly of the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, and he not only helped us with the acquisition of the artifacts. He was running the disposition of the artifacts out of the JFK hangar, post, I guess 2003, 2004. But nonetheless, he was also on the 65th floor of the North Tower on September 11th, and is a long-time Port Authority employee, and is going to share with us his experiences today. So we're very happy to have that, and it's a great honor to have Peter here today with us. So we look forward to that as our keynote, and then that'll be in a little bit. I know this is a long event. Hopefully everybody hangs in there. Hopefully the weather holds out. And the good news is this year we won't be burning under the sun, but hopefully the rain will hold out for us. If it does, please take time to go into the office building. We do have exhibits on the World Trade Center being displayed there. But the artifacts that we have today, are from the North Tower of the northeast corner of the North Tower, and they're plaza level, basically a slight subterranean level up to the 10th floor. And these trees or tridents and pieces were formed here at the plant, and we were happy to get them back and have them here. They really, we want to thank ArcelorMittal for helping us transport that and storing them. And there are a few other people I'd like to thank as well. The volunteers from Citadel Credit Union, Sharon and Tandrich and Fran Cherokee, and for being here. And we'd like to really recognize, of course, the police department and fire departments that are here today, Coatesville, Wagontown, Thorndale, Coatesville Police as well, fire. And I think that these, getting back to the pieces, these pieces are really, if we look back and we have 13 years to commemorate 9/11 and the attacks. These are, people can connect to these pieces in their own way. I think that's the one thing is, we talked about is we were all spread out all over the country, all over the world, and in different points in time of our life. And to receive the images and to receive this, distantly through television, and not actually having been there, it can be a less tangible or distant event. But having these pieces here, is a real symbol that this is something that happened. This was real. These were up in New York, and they were part of very large skyscrapers And that all ended in in a very short amount of time. And the impact that that had on our nation is talk about pre 9/11 and post 9/11. It's a watershed moment. But we all experience it a little differently. And I think that that's where we all have our own view, our own point of view, and how we experience 9/11, September 11th, and through the lens of our own personal experience. And the power in these objects as well is that it brings people together to have new experiences and to remember and reflect on that, and to have then a community vision for what 9/11 means beyond just the personal experiences and view. So again, these pieces are very treasured objects and artifacts, and we're happy to have one out on permanent display, and we would like to continue our efforts to memorialize what happened on that day. But I just want to thank you all for coming today and being a part of the program and taking time out of busy schedules and school and agendas. So I just want to thank you for being here to take time to reflect on that. The first bell ringing, I believe it will be 8:46. So I might have Gene DiOrio may come up. He will be emceeing today's event. So again, thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. As Scott told you, I'm Gene DiOrio, and at 8:46 we should have the first bell ringing, which, per your programs, commemorates Flight 11 crashing into the North Tower. Waiting for the ringing.
The time is now 8:46. United Airlines Flight 93 departs from New York International Airport bound for San Francisco. 37 passengers, 7 crew members, and 4 hijackers are aboard. Please observe a moment of silence. Time is now 8:46. Hijackers deliberately crashed American Airlines Flight 11, carrying 76 passengers, 11 crew members, into floors 94 through 98 of the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. Please observe the moment of silence.
I don't know how we could do these programs without the Lukens Band, and you'll be hearing them several times this morning. It's now my privilege and pleasure to introduce our honored guests, and first of all, the County Commissioners, Terrence Farrell and Kathy Cazzone. Is Commissioner Ryan here? He's just parking. Well, if you'd come up, please.
Good morning, everyone. First, I wanted to just thank the folks at Greystone and the museum for giving us this opportunity once again to take time out of our busy lives and remember what happened on September 11th. You know, every year when I think of this day, it's hard not to think about how absolutely gorgeous it was that morning. And you know, I was driving to work. I worked an hour away. It was beautiful out. I was in the office, and then all of a sudden, tragedy. And it's truly an example of how quickly our lives can change in one split second when we're not paying attention, or when we're not looking, or when we're not thinking about it. So in this last week, I have probably, like many of you, been watching certain shows on the National Geographic Channel, the Discovery Channel, about events that happened up to through 9/11, and I'm consistently reminded of how quickly life can change. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here, for myself and for all of you to remember the folks that were working in those buildings that we lost that day, the heroes, our first responders, law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, and those ordinary heroes who became extraordinary folks, people's friends and neighbors in their offices who helped other folks get out of a building. And remember that it's a true testament to the American spirit that we survived that day as a country. There are heroes that we will always remember, but we remember that we will continue to survive and to thrive as a nation. So today, let us take this opportunity to grieve, to remember, to be grateful and thankful for all of those heroes, but also to know that as Americans, we will survive, we will thrive, and we will never forget this day. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Terrence Farrell. I'm one of the 3 county commissioners, and I'm very pleased to be here again this year. How many of you have come to this ceremony in previous years? Raise your hands if you would. How many are here for the first time? Okay, welcome. And how many here were not alive on September 11th, 2001? Okay, my message is varied for the various parts of the audience. Hopefully for those folks who were not alive on September 11th, 2001, and who have not been here before, this will be a point in your life when you realize how strong America really is and how strong you will need to be in the future. Because this is a tragedy, certainly in our history, but there have been others. Days that I remember where I was, and I will always remember where I was, when John F. Kennedy was killed, when Martin Luther King was shot, when Bobby Kennedy was shot. I certainly remember exactly where I was on September 11th, 2001, pulling into my office in the Recorder of Deeds office, listening to the radio, and Bob Edwards at NPR saying a small plane had crashed into the tower of the World Trade Center, and thinking, how could a plane not see the World Trade Center? This was at 10 o'clock. By the time I got into my office, the news had progressed. Not only had both towers been hit, but the Pentagon had been hit. One of the towers had fallen, at least one of the towers had fallen. And for those of you who were not born yet on September 11th, 2001, you'll have to remember this was before we had smartphones, and we actually had to listen to the radio to get news, or the TV. It wasn't as instantaneous as it is today. But one of the things I do remember about September 11th, 2001, in reviewing the history, and I usually take this opportunity, and I would encourage each and every one of you to do so, is actually do some research, Google, read some old newspapers, remember a new aspect of that day. And what I did last night was actually look up Windows on the World, which is an interesting name for a restaurant. It was on the 106th and 107th floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And 164 people were trapped in that restaurant and died. And the critical thing for me is that if you look at the list of those who perished and where they were from, many were from the United States, New York City, but many were from other countries all over the world and called America home. And when you think about it, that's really what makes America so great. Look around, we are a diverse people who call ourselves Americans. You can go to other countries and everybody looks the same. But in America, we have many different backgrounds, many different places we have come from, and that diversity is our strength. That's what makes us strong. And perhaps that diversity and that freedom to be who you are, to worship the way you want, to live your life as you want to live it, is why the terrorists hated us so much that they were willing to give their own lives to kill us. I mean, that question really haunts me. Why did they attack us? We are so prosperous, strong, free, that it engenders hate in other people. So for you young people, grow up strong, be ever vigilant, and remember that there are people here in the audience today and role models that you may want to emulate, members of our first responder community who ran into the building when others were walking and running away. And on that day, there were 400 or so first responders who died, firefighters and police. And since that time, those in the military have gone to fight for our freedom overseas and to make sure we stay safe at home. And more than 7,500 soldiers, American soldiers, have died in wars overseas. So let us remember not only what happened in New York and in Virginia at the Pentagon and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, when the flight crashed, when we began to take back America from the terrorists, when those on the plane said, let's roll, and the fight began to preserve our freedoms. And the last thing I'd like to say is that that day always reminds me also, as Kathy mentioned, of how quickly life can turn. And there have been many instances since then of people going out and saying, I'll be right back. Never believe that the moment won't change, and that if you love someone, your spouse, your children, when you depart, tell them you love them, give them a kiss. Remember that life is not guaranteed from moment to moment, as we found out on September 11th and many times since. So thank you all for being here and sharing in this remembrance. And for those who did not experience it personally, do some research, commit yourself to knowing exactly how important this event is in our history, and its challenge to you to be strong and to meet the challenges that you will need to meet when you grow up. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ryan Costello, the third of the three commissioners. And I'm sure many of you watched the president's speech last night or are aware that he was speaking last night. And the point, whether we may disagree on what should our response be to the most recent threat that ISIS poses. But that is a consequence, or the aftermath, the continuing aftermath of what happened on 9/11. I mean, the threat is real. It continues to be real. And that is what I didn't do that. The message that I want to share with you relative to that is that for as much as we may disagree about things in this country, there is a lot more that unites us than divides us as Americans, and that's something that we should always remember. And this day represents a couple things to me, and I think to you. What unites us is that we care about where we live, we love our country, and protecting ourselves from terrorism is one of the most important priorities that we need to have as a nation. We also agree that if it were not for our fire, our police, and our first responders, we would be a lot worse off, and we rely on them at the most critical times of our lives, and we should be thankful for them. And this day represents a thanks to them and a recommitment to make sure that we're supporting them in so many ways. And finally, and it is the moniker that is right behind us, and it says, we will never forget. And this is a wonderful ceremony. I want to thank those who put it on this morning for us. And I also want to echo the words of Commissioner Cazzone and Commissioner Farrell, who I think both spoke very, very eloquently. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the commissioners of Chester County, all of who gave us very eloquent speeches on this occasion. And it's now my pleasure to hear from the City of Coatesville, Mr. Hamrick, who's President of City Council. Joe, would you do us the honor? These flags. Hold on to this.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. Like the commissioner said, what were you doing that day on 9/11? You know, my day started off, you know, like it normally did. I start out 5 o'clock in the morning and I swim a half mile before work. And then I drove down to Exton to start work at our plant, and I'm in technical support, and our phone started ringing immediately like it just did. I mean, it always did at 8 a.m. And then all of a sudden, near 9 o'clock, they just stopped. It was silence. You know, what happened? And then somebody said, when the first tower got struck, I mean, we were in complete shock. That phone did not ring for the whole day, you know, because the whole nation was in shock that day. As you know, Coatesville is a proud city, and Coatesville built those trees. And when those towers fell, the only thing that was standing was the trees. This town has a lot of heritage. My father-in-law worked in the steel mill, and he was on the work gang to keep the mill running. My son is now presently working in the mill. Okay, he works for outside contractors, but what his job is to keep the mills and the machinery running and to repair them. I remember what he told me 4 years ago when he first started with the company. One of the big containers that hauls away the slag had split in half, and he had to get a crane and pull it back together and started welding it. And his foreman said to him, "Hey, you're doing it wrong." But one of the laymen from the mill come over and he said, "Leave that young man alone. He knows what he's doing." And he did know what he's doing, because he listened to his father, his grandfather. Every day when he went over there, he listened to his grandfather tell him the workings of the steel mill and what they did and how the steel was made. And there's nobody in that plant that knows more than him, because he has walked every part of that mill, and he has torn buildings apart and found the prints and stuff like that that his father-in-law, my father-in-law, his grandfather signed. And, you know, it's just amazing, our heritage here, and we are proud to be Coatesville. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I think he hits a familiar note for those of us who were born and raised in Coatesville and know that Lukens was the heart and soul of the town. And there is this heritage from many, many generations, and he's described it very beautifully. Well, now we're ready for 9:03, another bell ringing, this time on the South Tower crashing.
The time is now 9:03. Hijackers deliberately crashed United Airlines Flight 175 carrying 51 passengers, 9 crew members into floors 78 through 84 of the South Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. Please observe a moment of silence.
Thank you. Now we have a musical selection from the Red Men. Bell tones, if you would. Thank you. Yes, a good hand to these wonderful students who are the future of this community. Well, now it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce our senator, our Pennsylvania Senator, the Honorable Andrew Dinniman. Andy? Hey, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. You know, several years ago, I said, let the sun shine and it shines. So we'll see if I can do the trick twice. President Consul Joe here has reminded me that he's waiting to see if it works. But here's the importance. You know, I had recently visited my brother in Arizona. And, you know, I knew my brother was a colonel in the Army, but he never quite told us what he did. And then he decided he was going to share. He's in his 70s now, and I discovered he was one of the heads of U.S. national security. And I never knew that. And he said something to me which makes perfect sense. He said, Andy, what you have to understand is there's some bad people out there. And what you have to understand is that some of these bad people do bad things. And today, we're here in unity to say we're going to stand up to those bad people. We're going to make sure they don't do bad things no matter where they are in Chester County, in the United States, or in the world. And you know, as I began to think about this, I realized how grateful we need to be to those in our armed forces, such as my brother. I realize how grateful we need to be to the police, the fire, and the emergency services. And today, we are expressing our gratitude. A community has certain power. And one of the powers that a community has is to remember. And when we come together to remember, it increases our resolve. It increases our commitment to stand up to the bad people who do bad things. So today, as we gather, we are very grateful for the Steel Museum. We're very grateful to the people of this community who have arranged and organized this event, because it enables each of us, in our way that may be small, to come together, because when we come together as one and hold hands, our smallness becomes greatness, doesn't it? It's like, you know, this past winter we saw a lot of snowflakes, didn't we? And snowflakes are very small and they can be very fragile. But boy, when those snowflakes come together as one, we didn't go to school. We didn't move on our highways. And so we in America need to understand that each of us are a snowflake. Oh my God, and let me say what I said 2 years ago. Let the sun shine on Coatesville. Let the sun shine on our armed services. Let the sun shine on all. And I'll tell you one thing, no matter how hot that sun gets, when we as snowflakes come together, we're not going to be melted down, because we're going to stand up once, again and again, as we've done in our history, for freedom and opportunity. We're going to stand up against those bad guys. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yes, our senator has many talents, and bringing the sun out at the right time is one of them. Well, it's now my pleasure again to introduce the Honorable Tim Hennessy, the member for this area of the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives. Tim?
Thank you, Gene.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today we gather to recall the horror from 13 years ago, the most devastating attack ever visited on our shores. We can all recall where we were that day. I heard someone musing about that a few moments ago. What we were doing, I can tell you that for those of you who had TV coverage and you could see it from the beginning, you understood the magnitude of this attack. I was in Harrisburg at a meeting, and we didn't have, believe it or not, 13 years ago, we didn't have a lot of television coverage available up in Harrisburg. So when the guards came around and said it was time to leave, we had to get out of the building, because there was some fear that the plane that crashed in Shanksville was actually headed toward our capital. They threatened to lock my car in the garage, and I might not get it out for a couple of days. That got my attention, and I got in the car and I listened to the radio, figuring I was coming here to Coatesville to the office. And as they described the devastation, I thought I had some sense of what was going on. But it really wasn't until I walked into a room and saw a television and saw those horrific images that I grasped the solemnity of the event, the horror of the event. So I can tell you that radio reports just simply didn't do it any kind of justice. Over these 13 years, when we've seen those videotapes repeated over and over and over again, the horror and the disbelief is just as real today as it was back then. Our disgust and our disdain for terror and our resolve to prevail over this evil is real and it's strong. And so today, as we recall those horrors and mourn those who lost their lives, who lost loved ones in the World Trade Center collapse, as we marvel at the courage of our first responders who ran into the building when everyone else was trying to get out, think of the courage, the fortitude that must have taken for those men and women. We remain a strong and unbowed nation. We remain the world's best force, the leading force for good in the world. And we acknowledge that 13 years have passed without a recurrence of that kind of calamity on our shores, and we can rejoice in that. And in that thought, today is a good morning, as we've said. In a world where the Middle East descends daily into a pit of chaos, Eastern Europe teeters again on the brink of war, with Asian threats from North Korea getting the bomb and with China seeking to expand all the time, we in America have more reason than ever to cherish our safety and our tranquility that we enjoy on a daily basis. We pray that we can preserve that peace and that safety in an increasingly hostile and dangerous world. We thank our military for keeping us safe and defending our freedom. We thank them for risking their lives when called upon. We pray that our President and our government leaders in Congress, that they can act with wisdom and courage and resolve as they lead our nation forward to meet this challenge. Thank you for being here at this ceremony this morning. You could have been anywhere. And as I drove down from my home today, I saw people, Americans, everyday Americans, going about their everyday business. And to an extent, that's how it should be in America. That's our victory over this kind of terror, to live our lives as we've been accustomed to living them, to make adjustments, sure, but to go on, to carry on our way of life. That gives us a victory over terror. So thank you for your priorities and being here. Thank you for being strong and resolute. And most of all, thank you for remembering. God bless those who died on September 11th. God bless those whose losses we can't begin to calculate. The wives, the children, the parents who suffered losses that live on even today. God bless our military men and women, and most of all, God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you, Gene. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce my colleague on this board, our Executive Director, Mr. Ziegler, who is going to take the program over from me right now.
Thank you, Gene. We'd like to extend a special thank you to the Ground Zero first responders and the local fire and police departments in attendance today. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dan O'Deans, the Executive Director of CPR3, a mission that breathes life and hope into the world through relief, rehabilitation, and development. Dan's background includes being a first responder to America's two worst crises, 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. Dan was a lead supervisor with the American Red Cross. Dan.
Manhattan Island is surrounded by piers, some in heavy use and some not so much. Pier 94, before 9/11, was used as an exhibition center for fashion shows and car shows and whatever else needed a large space in New York City. After September 11th, Pier 94 became a focal point of grief and desperation. The pier is located on the Hudson River on 54th Street, and as I walked each morning to my assignment, I would pass a wall plastered with thousands of posters with the portraits of those who were missing. Everywhere you look, you see the familiar uniforms of police, National Guard, firefighters, Army, FEMA jackets everywhere inside the pier. Every agency, governmental or private, that had anything to provide the families of the victims. The Red Cross, Salvation Army, United Way, all were there along with the Department of Labor, Crime Victims Bureau, Workers' Comp, Immigration, the FBI, mental health workers, spiritual caregivers, chaplains everywhere, looking for signs of despondence and distress, and it was everywhere. People didn't know what to do. I would arrive at Pier 94 usually around 7 a.m. I would leave around 11 p.m. It was my job to sit at the table representing the Salvation Army. Across the table from me were the countless victims who had lost their loved ones in the act of terrorism unleashed on America's soil, not too many streets south from where we sat. I would take their information, I would share my love, I would provide the services and the resources that the Salvation Army had to give. Sometimes I would get a chance to pray with those whose lives were in so much turmoil. The emotional intensity at Pier 94 was unceasing. It often felt like a factory, a processing plant or center for the thousands of applications who were suffering from loss. Did you lose a lot of friends? A waiter from Windows of the World was asked. Yes, 84. He didn't say a lot. He didn't say dozens. He said 84. He knew exactly. Here are the pictures of my apartment, says a young woman. She's professionally dressed, but frantic. Look, she said. Everything is gone, and she opens up her black briefcase and starts to drop everything. It's all gone. I don't have a home to go home to. And she begins to cry. Thousands of people walk by us. Some are angry and some are resigned, but all of them focused on rebuilding their lives. It's said that New Yorkers are tough and resilient. To that I would add compassionate and focused. In that warehouse, I would see a picture of pre-bureaucracy that I wish we could have all seen. Powerful people and powerful organizations realizing this tragedy was far greater than anyone's capacity, and that they would have to come alongside of each other in true partnership to meet the needs of the masses of people who seemed so hopeless and desperate. We became not only a team, but a family. From 11 p.m. until 3 a.m., after 16 hours of exhausting service, I would hop on a subway. I would take it as far south as the trains would go at that day, and I would get off and begin my evening hike into the zone that we now call Ground Zero. My responsibilities were varied. I had freedom to simply serve the people who were laboring on the pile. Our headquarters was a large tent only steps away from the rubble and the morgue. I would assist my other workers in feeding those who were hungry. I would take walks and encourage the firefighters and steel workers. It didn't take long to realize that I was clergy, and oftentimes a firefighter would come and get me and ask me if I would go down into the pile with him. He was simply looking for companionship, as so many workers were. When a body part was found, it was treated as a person and carefully and respectfully taken to the morgue. The fires would burn at the World Trade Center from September 11th until December 19th. The 20-hour days for 20 consecutive days, the exhaustion, the tension were partly forgotten. But what I remember still to this day was the opportunity to be a part of the rebuilding of hope in the individual lives of the people that I had the privilege of serving. When people go through a 9/11 experience, they search for hope and they reach out for faith. As we remember today what happened 13 years ago, let us remember three things. Today is a day of trust. Trust God. He will see you through it. Scripture says he is a strong tower, an ever-present help to those in time of trouble. Today is a day to love. Don't let your heart become a headquarters for hate. Let this terrible wickedness be the dark velvet upon which the diamond of God's love can be seen through you. People in the name of religion are slaughtering innocent human beings with blood and unimaginable brutality and horror, and it's still happening. Let that be the dark background against which the love of God shines brightly through us. Today is a day to unite. Admiral Yamamoto led the Japanese in the attack of Pearl Harbor. He reportedly said, "I had intended to deal a fatal blow to the American fleet by attacking Pearl Harbor. I fear all I have done is awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." I believe the terrorists of September 11th did exactly the same thing. They have awakened a sleeping giant. We have not defeated that giant to date. We'll never be alike. We may never look alike or act alike or even believe alike. But let's unite our hearts and stand together against this evil. Today, 13 years later, terrorism still haunts us. What have we learned? And what must we remember? We must put our faith in God. Soon after the terrible attacks, the president asked Americans to join him in a moment of silence as he prayed, may God bless the victims, their families, and America. During the noon news, the nearby Soft Rock station interrupted its broadcast to ask a prominent local minister to pray on the air for the victims in our country. Even the most non-religious seem to admit, at least in times of crisis, that in God we trust. Continue to love your family. Despite all the bad rap families might get, the first thing family members did was get to a phone or an email program and try to search for their loved ones. Those who were being hijacked, terrified passengers used their cell phones to call family members and let them know that they loved them. America is still a land of family values. And lastly, be aware of mortality. On this day of remembering a horrible tragedy, we would do well to remember that when we step onto a plane or get on the bypass or simply go to work, we have no money-back guarantee that we will return safely to our home and our loved ones, and thus a reminder to love our families and live our lives with that sense of mortality in mind.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's also my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lisa Doan Harley, the Global Studies Curriculum Coordinator of the Coatesville Area High School District. Dr. Doan Harley will present South Brandywine Middle School teachers and students participating in this year's scholastic theme, Making the World a More Tolerant Place. South Brandywine was the first school to partner with the National Iron and Steel Heritage Museum's annual September 11th commemoration service. Lisa?
Good morning. On behalf of the Coatesville Area School District and South Brandywine Middle School, we would like to thank the National Iron and Steel Heritage Museum, as well as the Greystone Society, for providing our students with the opportunity to be with you here today to pay our respects to the victims, survivors, and first responders of 9/11. This day will forever be remembered by all Americans as a day of tragedy. But within that tragedy, lessons of hope, heroism, and bravery have risen. 3 years ago, South Brandywine and the National Iron and Steel Heritage Museum forged a partnership of commitment to educate our young people in the importance of this day. Please be mindful that our current 6th and 7th graders and approximately 1/3 of our 8th graders were not yet born on September 11th, 2001. Utilizing the valuable resources we have right here in our own backyard, we have committed to helping our students understand these events and to stress what each of us can do to make the world a more tolerant place. I would like to introduce Mrs. Heather Michalski, a reading specialist from South Brandywine, to tell you about the students' projects this year.
As Lisa said, we're very thankful to continue this valuable partnership with the National Iron and Steel Museum, so thank you again for having us. As we reflect on the events that happened on September 11, 2001, we asked the South Brandywine 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to examine the concept of tolerance through the eyes of a middle school student. This year, students were offered 3 options in which to express how tolerance can make the world a better place for all of us. Those students who were more artistically inclined created a visual representation of tolerance. These visuals were pieced together to create a paper quilt, And that paper quilt is displayed inside the executive office, which you're welcome to view after today's ceremony. Other students were offered the opportunity to merge art with the power of words. And as a final option, students could express their position on tolerance through a short essay. I'm proud to introduce those students who were selected to represent South Brandywine and share their work with you today. First up will be 6th grader Mariska Purdick, and she will share her artwork, Representation of Tolerance.
Hi, my name's Mariska Purdick, and my piece is called Dreams Around the World. I feel that if everyone just had a little more tolerance, things like 9/11 wouldn't happen. Thank you.
Fellow 6th grader Beth Oliver will also share her artwork.
Hi, I'm Beth Oliver. My piece is called Better Together. I think that if we were all together and not fighting, then the world would be a better place. Thank you.
Please now welcome 7th grader Hunter DeShillo as she shares her artwork.
Hi, I'm Hunter DeShillo, and my project is called Our Needs of Society. My message is to make sure that all people treat others with respect. If I don't want people to be judged by what they look like or their background. Thank you.
Next up, 7th grader Emily Melvin will also share her artwork.
My name is Emily Melvin, and my project is titled The World in the Future. My message was to stop discrimination, shaming, to respect others and ourselves. Every person, black, white, male, female, Jewish, or Christian, is still a human being. No one should be left out. Maybe this will be the future, our future.
Next we have 7th grader Kayla Bach, who will read her essay on tolerance.
Our country is known for freedom. Therefore, there's a lot of tolerance as well. All of us in this country, let alone world, are different. Whether regarding to race, religion, likes, dislikes, practices, etc., we each have our own mind where we make up what we are going to do about something, as in making a life-changing decision for either yourself or for someone in need. I do truly believe that God has put us on this earth not just to live, but to be kind. To be kind to those who aren't as fortunate as we are. In order to make this country, better yet this world, a better place, we shouldn't tolerate anything that is harming innocent people globally. Whether regarding to war, starvation, etc., the thing that bothers me the most is that some people don't even have roofs over their head, let alone not even a single crumb to eat. I also know that there are thousands upon thousands of organizations trying to accomplish this by making some of this stuff come to an end, but it always doesn't even help all the time. Most of the time, yes, but not how I'd like to see it. Basically, I'm trying to say that if we tolerate and put up with these things, it can make this world a bigger and better place.
Our first 8th grader is India Thomas Rivera, who will also read her essay.
My name is India. Tolerance is being able to deal/handle with a situation or even a person. There have been many situations where tolerance wasn't involved, and that led to attacks/wars in the U.S. If people had more tolerance, things like attacks would occur way less often. We Americans and others would have a more opened eye on how others are different than ourselves. We could also be able to express our concerns/thoughts in a more peaceful manner. The lack of tolerance can be found anywhere and everywhere. It is found in our communities, our place of business, and even our schools. There are many things we can do to create more tolerance in our world. One thing I would do is try to figure out and understand their doing before my reacting. Another thing I would do is improve communication skills. This could help with solving problems without acting out in violence. There are many more things you can do to improve tolerance in our community. Those are mine.
Next up, 8th grader Aaliyah Young will detail her artwork.
Hi, I'm Aaliyah Young, and my art piece is called United Nations. It's showing that everyone is together. If you cut open your arm and have two people from different colors, it's the same blood. It's red. We all have it. Can anyone raise their hand if they have a friend that's different race or color? See, we all care. We don't care that I'm white or someone's black or they're Mexican. We all are the same together inside. I don't want this day to be a sad day. I want it to be where the life that was lost, their lives be celebrated that they lived. And they need to be celebrated that the ones who were heroes, they celebrated their life. They knew they could be lost, but they celebrated others' lives. And I want to celebrate their lives. I don't want to be sad and mourn for their lost. I want them to celebrate. They lived, they had fun, they saw the world, they lived, they just know. And they loved their family, they loved their friends. They loved and had, they could have children. And they loved their children, loved their husbands or wives, loved their mother and fathers. But they knew that they lived. Thank you.
And we'll pause for a moment, and then we'll continue with our final presentation.
The time is now 9:43. Hijackers deliberately crashed Flight 77, carrying 58 passengers and 6 crew members, into the Pentagon near Washington, D.C. Please observe a moment of silence.
Cassie Gregg will now end our student representatives with her essay entitled How Tolerance Can Make the World Better.
Tolerate, to allow the existence, presence, practice, or act of without prohibition or hindrance, to permit. Imagine a scale with a different idea on each side. Obviously, one side will weigh out the other. If you add toleration to the outweighed side, it evens out, keeping the peace. Without that, we would fall apart. Toleration is 3 syllables, 9 letters that can make a world of difference. Without toleration, we would be at war a lot of the time. Without toleration of beliefs, religions, ideas, etc., we would be a mess, and society would fall apart. In society, you need to be able to tolerate other people and their ways. When we do, there are no problems, but when we don't, conflict arises. Toleration keeps the balance of the countries and most of the world. If the world would have more toleration, there would be a lot less fighting and violence. We would have a lot safer country here and overseas. We wouldn't have to worry about wars and how they affect us. We would feel safer when traveling, whether by train, boat, or plane. No, having tolerance won't stop people from violence, but it will cut down on terrorist attacks and government protests. If the world had more tolerance, it would be all around a better place. From less violence to a safer community, toleration can make all the difference. 3 syllables, 9 letters, that's all it takes.
We want to thank all our South Brandywine students who joined us today to share their views. We're very proud of you, as is the Coatesville School District. I'd now like to introduce my reading specialist colleague, Beth McKee, to wrap up South Brandywine's section of today's program.
In our social studies classes, we teach about our past so that great deeds are not forgotten and a brighter future can be ensured. It is our hope that in learning about the tragedy of September 11th, our students understand that acceptance and tolerance are the building blocks of a brighter future. It is apparent through your works, your essays, that you have showed us and inspired us to make those ideals for ourselves. So we conclude by again saying to you that you can go and see all of the students' artwork and essays inside the Greystone building, and we thank you for this forum for our students.
Again, today we commemorate the 13th anniversary of September 11th. And again, I want to put at the forefront there the over 2,900 victims that perished that day, as well as the firefighters, 343 firefighters and 60 police officers that also responded and perished that day. And impacted then, as Dan so succinctly put, was the families, the survivors. But today is a reflection on that, the cost of that day as well, not to forget. And I know that we have a few fire companies represented today, Wagontown, Thorndale, and Coatesville. And they are the people that put it on the front lines domestically here to get out, to be the first response in a need, our time of need. And there's a time when we look to them and we need them, and that they provide calm and collect, organized emergency response. And so we really need to thank them for being here today and every day. And again, let's take a round of applause for our first responders. At this time, I would also like to recognize the victims from Chester County who perished on September 11, 2001 by reading their names and having a moment of silence. Christopher Clark. Christopher was a bond trader for Sandler O'Neill Partners on the 104th floor of 2 World Trade Center. He was born in Devon and grew up in Villanova before graduating from St. Joe's Prep in 1986. He was the husband of Casey Connors and the son of Janet and Frank Clark. Michael Horrocks. Michael was the quarterback of the football team and graduate of Westchester University. He was a United States Marine before becoming first officer in American Airlines Flight 175. He was the husband of Miriam, and his children were Krista and Mick. Kevin Marlowe. Kevin, a graduate of Henderson High School in Westchester, was an associate director of equity sales and trading for Sandler O'Neill Partners on the 104th floor of 2 World Trade Center. He made cameo appearances on the Jay Leno Show and Woody Allen movie. A week prior to 9/11, he completed filming of a reality TV show on the WB network. He was the son of Dennis Marlowe and Rosemary Mayer. George Smith. George was a graduate of Phoenixville High School and attended Allentown College. He was a deacon of Cornerstone Evangelical Free Church in Kimberton. He worked on the 97th floor of 2 World Trade Center as a senior business analyst with SunGard Asset Management Systems Global Plus. His parents were Raymond Smith and Georgia Jackson. Richard Stewart. Richard was from the Kennett area and attended Upland Country Day School, where he played ice hockey, becoming the school's single-season scoring leader with 42 goals, a record that lasted 13 years. He was a bond trader at Cantor Fitzgerald on the 104th floor, 1 World Trade Center. Richard was the subject of an award-winning Comcast Sportsnet documentary. We would also like to recognize Chester Countyans associated with the salvage effort. Chief John DeMarco, Upper Euclid Township Police, Detective Thomas Jones, Upper Euclid Township Police, Mr. Lou Angeli, firefighter Kennett Square, Mr. James Thompson, New York firefighter, Mr. Kevin Chandler, VA Fire Department, Andrew Englander, Elverson EMS, Detective Sergeant William Cahill, Westtown East Goshen Police Department, Corporal Timothy Hubbard, Westtown, Easttown Goshen Police Department, Detective Robert Balkunas, Westtown, East Goshen Police Department, and Dan O'Deans with the American Red Cross. Again, we can't thank you enough for the service you provide and inspire in keeping our community safe. Thank you very much.
more beautiful. For heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. Talking about America, oh sweet America, may God thy gold refine till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. You know, when I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of green, for purple mountains, majestic, above the faded place, America, oh sweet America, God has shed his grace on thee, and he crowned thy good will, brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Won't you sing it with me? You know the words. America, oh sweet, sweet America, my God done shed his grace on thee. Oh yes he did, and he crowned thy good will, brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh Lord, I thank you, Lord. Shining sea.
The time is now 9:59. The South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses in New York. Please observe a moment of silence.
If tomorrow all the things are gone I've worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I'd thank my God above to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. 'Cause I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, from New York to LA, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Yes, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the
The time is now 10:03. Passengers aboarded United Airlines Flight 93, carrying 40 passengers and crew. The launch counterattack on hijackers aboarded the plane to try to seize control of the aircraft. The plane crashed into an empty field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. Please observe a moment of silence.
Well, it's now going to be my very special pleasure and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. As you see in our program, Mr. Peter Miller has been very involved working with the Port Authority in New York, and in particular, he was custodian of the archives. And as Scott Houston will agree with me, during the period that we were negotiating with the Port Authority of New York for the trees and had several trips to the JFK airport, we were working with Peter, and we owe him an enormous debt of thanks for the help, the cooperation, and his support with the idea of these trees coming back to Coatesville. I'm sure he's going to give a very interesting talk. He came down from New York yesterday with his gracious wife, Kathy. So I will be very privileged. Peter, if you would come up. Let's hand for our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Gene. You really know how to pull out all the stops here. Honor Guard and band, middle schoolers speaking wisdom beyond their age. I brought enough water, but I'm not sure I brought enough Kleenex. I guess I'm channeling my inner John Boehner. I'm so proud to be here and honored and surprised. It really isn't something I do often, and hopefully that won't show too prominently. In addition to being here because of the archive assignment I was honored to get from the Port Authority, I'm primarily here because I survived 13 years ago and went on to co-found a group called the World Trade Center Survivors Network, and we incorporated as a nonprofit. We sought support. We sought a voice for ourselves, and we tried to get our lives back together after a traumatic experience. So I'm going to do something really risky here and quote Amanda Ripley, who at the time in 2004 was a reporter for Time magazine. In 2004, as a reporter working on Time magazine's coverage of the third anniversary of 9/11, I decided to check in with some of the people who had survived the attacks. Unlike many of the families of the victims, survivors had kept to themselves. They felt so lucky or guilty or scarred that they hadn't wanted to make much noise. I was curious to hear what had happened to their lives. I got in touch with the World Trade Center Survivors Network, one of the first and largest support groups. Going to their meeting, I prepared myself for an exchange of grief. After 9/11, I had heard so many stories. Every widow, firefighter, and victim had a unique tragedy to tell. The city's pain seemed to have no bottom. But the survivors at this meeting had an agenda. They wanted to tell other people before the next terrorist attack what they had been through and what they should know. There was an urgency in the room. The survivors were from all neighborhoods, all ethnicities, all professions, but they had very similar things to say. They had learned so much that morning, and they wondered why no one had prepared them. One proposed to educate people about how it feels to escape a skyscraper. A woman said, "We were the real first responders. Until firefighters reached us or we walked down to them, there was no one to help us." I realized these people had glimpsed a part of human condition that most of us never see, and wondered what they had learned. And that really is one big part of the survivor experience, and I hope to give you some idea about that, but I must warn you that while what Amanda says in 2004 is absolutely true, I was one of those survivors who felt we had learned lessons and had things to tell people. As we went forth and started talking to middle schools and trying to articulate just what these critical lessons were, we found it was awfully complicated, and it really wasn't until people like Amanda Ripley published her book in 2008. It's titled The Unthinkable, Why People Survive, that she was able to synthesize all of the wisdom and knowledge that has been brought to bear on the issue of what we go through when we experience trauma. And so I really encourage you to read the book, and that's your homework. But I also have a few remarks on that. Because what I realized, let's go back to 9:15, 13 years ago. It was my first day back from vacation. I had taken 10 days off and then was going to go in the Monday before, but a colleague called and said he had an opening for a golf outing, and it was a nice one. They had lots of door prizes, and I got one and had a wonderful day. And so I went in Tuesday a little earlier because I felt a little guilty about not being there when I told my boss my vacation was going to be over. And so I was going through all the emails, and my office was on the windows on the north side of the North Tower, One World Trade Center, on the 65th floor. And I had enjoyed my coffee and enjoyed the view out the window. As one of the commissioners said, what a beautiful day it was that day. Everyone who lives in this part of the world knows, I've heard you only have 10 cloudless days in your entire life when you live in this part of the world. And today is an example of why it's so hard to get a cloudless day. I mean, I could see the George Washington Bridge as clear as a bell, the Empire State Building, all the way up the Hudson River, probably 30 or more miles. And finished my coffee, turned my back to the window, and went to the hundreds of emails that had accumulated while I was away on vacation. Forget about smartphones. We didn't have Blackberries. They were just starting to be available. I didn't even have a cell phone at the time. And I hear a plane behind me, and I'm struggling with all this business on the emails, so I don't turn around right away. It was unusual to have a plane that loud and that close behind me, I could tell. But it wasn't unique. Fleet Week, the week before Memorial Day, I had seen the stealth bomber fly in formation with fighters up the Hudson. The odd day you'd hear a big rumble over on the East River and look out, and one of the C-5 military cargo planes would be rumbling up towards Fort Drum up by Watertown. But those were flying normally. You could hear the engines, but what I heard behind me was like a plane trying to take off. What we experienced when a plane takes off. So as I'm turning around, I expected to see some Tom Cruise Top Gun fighter pilot risking court-martial to do some stunt like fly between the towers or something crazy. As I'm turning around to see the plane hit the building, it came in much too fast for me to even get a glimpse of it. And I felt the floor drop, and I froze. The woman in the office next to me had been still enjoying her coffee and looking up the Hudson as I had just a few minutes before. And when she picked herself up off the floor, she said, "Oh my God, it looked like it was coming right at me. What should we do?" And I snapped out of my frozen state, and I said, "The building's going to collapse underneath us. Let's get into the center where maybe we can still stand." I just, in my mind, thought the whole side of the building was going to collapse. After 2 steps towards the center of the building, the tower stopped vibrating violently, and I realized we'd survived the first impact. Our floor was the aviation department of the Port Authority. It was the entire floor. So we knew we had to get out. My colleague had seen the plane. I knew it was a plane. We knew it was about 30 stories above us. And we went to the center towards the stairwells, and people gathered in the hallways, talked about what to do. My colleagues on the south side of the floor had no idea what it was. They didn't even know it was above us. So it was helped to get us into the stairwells and evacuating that we could say it was a plane, it was above us, it's bad. My colleague who'd seen it had seen an airline logo on it, had seen that it was a commercial plane. She didn't remember what logo or how big a commercial plane, but that was a help as well. So the point is, we all entered the stairwell, and the 65th floor all survived because we got down and out almost immediately. On the 4th floor, just one floor below us, colleagues in another department, people I knew, 6 of them congregated. Instead of evacuating, they decided the thing to do was to wait for instructions. And one reason they felt confident to do that was that they had a conference room in their department on their floor equipped with communication, not just telephones, but I believe it was more sophisticated communication. And they started calling out to other Port Authority facilities and asking for instructions. The tragedy of that is that the instructions to evacuate for those poor people didn't come until it was too late, and their bodies were found in the stairwell. I too can say exactly how many people the Port Authority lost. It was 86, including Port Authority police who responded with fire and police running into the disaster instead of evacuating. And many of the Port Authority operations people stayed and helped because they knew how to access. They had keys to the building. They knew how the building worked. So in the stairwell, we didn't panic. We were panicky, but everyone held together. And we were black, white, Jew, Christian, Buddhist, agnostic, and there were no distinctions. We had one purpose. One gentleman started yelling about the terrorists and how he'd known they were going to come back. immediately 3 or 4 people got in his face and convinced him that this wasn't the time for making a speech, and there'd be plenty of time for that once we got out. People who were infirm, one woman had a pacemaker and was so upset it started triggering. It's like having a horse kick you in the chest, I hear. Someone had to walk with her down, and everyone around tried to keep her as calm as possible. Anyone who had any doubt about going back up was grabbed and pulled to keep going down. And eventually the firefighters reached us, and I remember the ones who took over injured people who needed help probably may have saved their lives by turning around and helping. The vast majority of them just kept trudging up, and we were reaching them in maybe the 20th floor, the 40th floor at the tops. And I remember how hot they were. They're carrying almost 100 pounds in gear, and it was really hot in those stairwells. And we knew their destination, where the fires and the planes had hit, was so much higher. It just seemed incredibly brave and hopeless what they had ahead of them. The thing about the experience is that I realized I was a different person in that stairwell. The Peter Miller of 9/11 is not the Peter Miller standing here before you. And I'm not the Peter Miller who was enjoying his coffee at 9:15 in the morning 13 years ago. And as Amanda Ripley says, we thought we had learned something, is the way she expressed it. What it turned out to be is that we were wonderful subjects, and Amanda is a journalist, and she synthesized lots of scholarship, but scholars like Dr. Robin Gershon of Columbia University, who led the evacuation study of interviewing all of us, we were wonderful subjects, and her conclusions are the lessons learned, and they have been formalized in the revision of the New York City Building Code. There's a Dr. Galea in Greenwich University, Greenwich College in England, and he is still doing innovative work on evacuations and modeling how people behave. Most evacuation models treated people like flowing water, and there was an average rate, and everyone got out in a certain amount of time. And his model is more sophisticated and shows that people bunch up and behave differently than water. All of this really wasn't available to anyone ahead of time, and as your senator's reference to his brother, who is in charge of national security, one of the things we learned is that people like heads of national security and fire and police, they're reluctant to share a lot of scary information with people, and there are good and bad reasons for that. But the thing that surprised us, because we had also bought into that, was that, well, when something really scary happens, people are going to panic, and you might be trampled. And when none of that happened, we thought there ought to be better ways to disseminate information, and that's true, and it's now the science of what happens in bad situations is light years ahead of where it was on 9/11. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. The primary thing is it also changed me in that I had this sense that, I'm just not going to go back. I am truly changed. In 1993, oh yes, in 1993, when the terrorists tried to blow up the building the first time, they drove a truck bomb into the basement and blew a big hole under the hotel that was built between the two towers. And, a lot of smoke came up. And I was almost in the exact same position on the 65th floor of the North Tower. Only that day it was 12:35, and I delayed going out to lunch. Little World Trade Center survivor humor is the lessons learned from the two incidents is that you go to lunch early and come to work late, or come to work late and take lunch early. Lots of those lessons are. Another thing we thought was that 93 was the best fire drill that we'd ever had. Turns out Dr. Gershon very gently told me that was completely wrong. Remember after Hurricane Katrina, the press was full of speculation that people died because they didn't have money to evacuate. They didn't have transportation to evacuate. And it's complicated, and it certainly was a contributing factor, but if you take the time to read all of the scientific studies of why people died in Katrina, it comes down to the fact that most of the people were older. Experience was not a fire drill to help you get out. It gave you a sense of false confidence. People who died in Katrina tended to be those who had been through previous hurricanes, and well, I survived those, this one ain't gonna get me. And that absolutely was the case. I was in the stairwell and I started thinking about 93, and on 9/11 I'm in the stairwell thinking about 93. Well, now, the buildings didn't collapse then. People who stayed in their offices breathed less smoke than I did evacuating, which is true. Firefighters eventually got to everybody. It wasn't until 8 or 9 o'clock that the last person was found, but we had no sense of urgency. And that's certainly one of the lessons, is that down and out and quick action is essential. Because there are plenty of people who are slower or handicapped or have things holding them back that you're only going to be in their way if they do have the fortunate case to get out. But I digress. The thing about change and not being the same led me to behave differently at work. The treatment was not too much advanced from what it was in 93. We had some counseling, and the clear message was get back to work. And you know, there's a lot to be said for just get over it and go back to work. As a psychiatrist told the network at one of its meetings, denial is a wonderful coping mechanism, and a lot of people get over traumatic experiences by closing the door and never opening it again. And I can't predict whether you're a ticking time bomb or a resilient person for doing that. The real thing is that I would never have had the assignment by the Port Authority, the honor to be in charge of the artifact archive, if I hadn't started doing things differently, starting the Survivors Network, survivors were not ever invited to the memorial to participate with family members to read names. We asked why. Well, one official told us survivors in New York are not significant. Yet survivors of other disasters like the Oklahoma City Murrah building bombing not only are significant, their names are in a section of the memorial in Oklahoma City. But as Amanda said in the quote I read, you know, it's also our fault. We didn't want to make a lot of noise. We were asking kindly, and New York is a rough place. Survivor's guilt works in subtle ways. And my recovery was a pretty easy one. When I started this Survivors Network and started talking to survivors and hearing about loss of sleep and panic attacks, I didn't have any of that. So, and there was such an outpouring of help. We've heard of people from here who responded. And people responded to help from all over the world, and they did what they knew how to do. So if you were a therapist, you volunteered and offered therapy. And boy, did we have therapy available. Oh my goodness. There was music therapy, there was art therapy, there was conventional talking therapy, unconventional therapies like flooding, which is horrifying. You re-traumatize the person by flashing images of 9/11 in their face and sounds of explosions, and somehow that's supposed to, well, I don't know, I didn't try it. I could have. I tried the art therapy. That was fun. You come out with a painting in the end, and it's really a fooler though. It's a trick. While you're painting, they're trying to get you to talk. So it's pretty much like traditional psychotherapy, where they want to make sure that you believe everything's okay, and that's good. But you know, my real drive in my recovery was I wanted to understand how these three Peter Millers came to be, the one before, the one during, and then the one who went back to normal afterwards. It wasn't normal before. It wasn't the normal of before 9/11, but it was a new normal. And I love the commissioner who asked who was born, who was not born. I've spoken to middle school students, and a lot of them weren't born on 9/11, and that's their normal. You're in a world, and it's wonderful to see how accepting you are of that. I was talking about how everything had changed, and one 8th grader said, yeah, but you never experienced a lockdown exercise, did you? And I had to admit, you know, these kids, post-Columbine, you're amazing. You're taking that right in stride as a normal part of what you got to prepare for. So it wasn't until reading Amanda's book in 2008 that I started to understand just what happened to my personality in a state of stress. And I won't go into it, but she talks about how the brain changes, how the parts of the brain take over, and adrenaline, and how your blood flows differently, and why first responders are driven to go up into a burning building when I was going down thinking, gee, people are dying up above me. Should I go back up? And every time, my wife Kathy's voice was right there. I knew she would be worried sick, and she's a worrier. I didn't have a cell phone, so I told her, I said, well, I'll get down, I'll call her, and then I'll go back and see how I can help around the edges. But there was no way I was driving myself back up. And why should I? I was an office worker, no training, and yet here I was in what's equivalent of a combat situation. And it wasn't until after the Survivors Network got together and we met some Vietnam vets, and one guy who had been in a support unit said, you know, I have friends who've been through combat the way you were on 9/11. They won't ever talk about it with me, but when they get together, the ones who shared that experience, they talk. And that was one of the primary values of the Survivors Network. We got people together who had never talked about it before. And there's a certain comfort when you're with someone who lost a loved one. You hold back because you don't want to hurt their feelings. And when you're with a firefighter who risked his life, you're in awe. It's difficult to open up. But those changes are profound, and it's important to understand how we react. And if you're ever interested in joining the Special Forces, you should read Amanda's book. People who qualify for the Special Forces, as I understand it, have to go through survival school, and firefighters and police go through it day to day. The stress tests you, and your brain can handle it. And in interviewing people who handle it and function and then go back to normal afterwards, they're different than I am. Their brains are different, but the good news is their training is different too. There are stories of policemen who couldn't drive a squad car with the siren going at a high-speed chase, and he realized he was going to kill someone, and he cured himself by meditation, basically, deep breathing while the siren was running, and eventually he was able to function. Because that's what the brain does when it's faced with a life or death situation. We shut down, and the brain sheds everything except what it has to have. I've heard stories from survivors who were in the stairwell with me who, part of their evacuation, they went blind. They couldn't see. Another part, they had a complete out-of-body experience. They saw themselves below and they were floating above. And what scientists will tell us, and medical science will tell us, is that's the disassociation that occurs. It's the body shutting down, the brain unable to handle the horror. And Special Forces people and police and fire have to have those brains that remain functional and then snap back and don't have lasting effects. And it's just amazing. And the final thing about how I changed is that, well, I have no Special Forces brain. I did have my post-9/11 brain, which was, let's try and make work a little more interesting. Let's try and understand what happened to me. And so while I was working harder and really focusing on my desk job at the Port Authority, I also got involved through the Survivors Network. We identified the Survivors Stair, which is saved in the memorial, and it's a wonderful artifact, arguably one of the most significant artifacts. It was the survivors' last column. The last column was the last piece of steel at bedrock to be removed, and it was covered with mementos, tributes to firefighters and construction workers, and it's in the Memorial Museum, was always going to be there. Survivors Stair was the last above-ground remnant of the Trade Center after these survivors were removed and stored. And we started a campaign to save it. And as a small, powerless group of survivors, we can't say we did save it. Actually, I credit the Port Authority with being the primary entity that saved it. And it's there. You should all go to see it. So that involvement with the artifacts led me to an awareness that there's this huge archive in the Kennedy Airport in a Pan Am hangar big enough to hold 2 747s at the same time. The doors closed around their tails, and there were thousands of artifacts there, including your tree columns and everything as small as pieces of paper from offices and keys, newspapers, life-size statuettes from the Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny store, and they were all stored there almost immediately after 9/11. I didn't have much to do with the process. I was a self-effacing survivor, just glad to be alive in 2002 when the archive started. But then in 2008, I heard that the manager had left and things were sort of up in the air. So I wrote a proposal to the Memorial Museum and said, I would like to be assigned by the Port Authority to you to make sure these things are taken care of. And I did that, and I explained to them that I had heard that the Port Authority does assign people to external agencies, and it only happens if the external agency asks and that it comes at a very high level. So that was the last of my proposal. I thought it was falling on deaf ears, and then Chris Ward, the executive director of the Port Authority at the time, makes an appointment with me, and I go in, and he says, I saw your proposal. I don't know how he got it, really. I suspect Joe Daniels of the Memorial Museum gave it to him, but he's never admitted to it. And Chris said, we don't want the museum to do that. The Port Authority saved those artifacts. We want to give them away. And I didn't know they wanted to be given away. I was dropped in from the middle of nowhere just by my own gumption, and I was so honored to get that assignment. And like 6 months into it, the lawyer and the public affairs person finally warmed up and gave me a spreadsheet, and I saw that they had been getting requests since 2002. There may be 75 of them. And I go down the list, and there are 6. And I didn't realize they were all connected. And they weren't the first. In 2003, Rick Santorum, senator, wrote on behalf of the Lukens group. And then a few months later, the office of Joe Pitts wrote on behalf of Greystone. And then 2006 or so, it was National Iron and Steel Museum. There are 3 or 4 names, and a total of 6 letters. About more than 5% of the total historical requests that the Port Authority had tabulated. I don't know if they even responded to them. But the truth was that until 2008, all of the lawsuits, there's a federal judge overseeing all of the lawsuits. Port Authority couldn't give away any of the steel. And talk about timing. I was brought in just as the judge was willing to sign off on gifts. And early on, in fact, my first meeting with Chris Ward, he said, we have so much out there. Do the best you can, but I want that hangar empty by 2011, the 10th anniversary. And I don't know how you're going to do it. You better research how the city recycled the steel from this trade center. So 200,000 tons of steel were estimated to have been in the Twin Towers standing. The hangar contained maybe 1%. All of the rest of the steel had been stripped, searched, made sure there were no body parts, But then it was recycled in an anonymous program to make sure no one profited from what, made things that they could then sell at a higher price because it was World Trade Center steel. So I did start looking into recycling, and I also started the program and started meeting with Gene and Scott because we thought we couldn't give everything away, we used to give 2-3 hour tours to requesters, some asking for only a little piece, but we were happy to give them the full view of the archive, and it really did encompass the Trade Center in an archival way. There were 2 cars from the PATH station in the basement, and vehicles, the medical examiner's vehicles, a lot of the fire trucks from the houses that had lost everyone were there. And just about the time we managed to get the paperwork all processed, including the federal judge signing a court order saying that Lukens could have the steel at all, an article in the New York Times started to kick in, and websites that firefighters and police go to for gossip, latest equipment, procedures, across the country communication. And we were flooded with requests, and we realized, oh my goodness, we could have given away twice as much as we saved. So Lukens' timing was extremely good as well. I can't tell you how fitting it is that you have 10 of the Tridents, the survivors of the collapses. They were still standing. What you have is the northeast corner of my office building, the One World Trade Center, and Port Authority engineers who tagged them to be saved right from the beginning did so because they were still standing. So again, you have a wonderful symbol for survivors as well as memorial for the World Trade Center. I can't thank you enough. I don't know what my time is. I could keep going. Do I have time? I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
The bell resembles the time of 10:28. The North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York collapsed. All 16 acres of the World Trade Center site are in ruins. A rescue and recovery effort begins. Please observe a moment of silence.
Thank you. I just have one last thought I wanted to close with, and it's actually from 100 years ago. It's the centennial of World War I. And in 1917, a freighter loaded with 2,500 tons of explosives in Halifax Harbor caught fire and became the largest bomb explosion on record. It leveled the port, triggered fires, a tidal wave, and in the end, 2,000 people died. Samuel Henry Prince, a survivor, responder, a minister who set up a triage center in his church, then went on in his recovery to go to sociology school at Columbia University. And he became the father of the study of human behavior in disasters. He wrote, "Life becomes like molten metal. Old customs crumble and instability rules." Now, instead of going from that observation downward, Prince, being an optimist, insisted that ultimately, the horrific explosion had blown Halifax into the 20th century. And by that, he was looking at industrial modernization of the port and other improvements. Another quote, this awful catastrophe is not the end, but the beginning. History does not end so. It is the way its chapters open. Now, 9/11 certainly blew us into the 21st century, and I don't know if I'm the optimist Prince is, but what a wonderful outlook, and let us all look towards making the 21st chapter of the human race a great one, an amazing one. Thank you.
Well, Peter, it's we who must thank you. As I indicated when I introduced him, he was enormously helpful to us when Scott and I were over several times, and with the arrangement and seeing that we got the very large artifacts. Now we have another reason to be grateful to you for coming down and giving us this wonderful experience, your philosophies, your bringing into very sharp focus what it must have been like in New York on that horrible, horrible day. And you brought back a bit of history. I was happy to see that you found several letters from us and from our supporters, because early on we had hoped to get a tree or two for the museum. And as Peter indicated, things were tied up in lawsuits, but when the judges released it, the Port Authority went public, and lo and behold, one day there was an article on the front page of the New York Times indicating that they were going to dispose of things. And I said to Scott, we got to get back over there, and we did. So you're seeing happy results. But once again, we're happy to have you and his wife. Kathy, please stand up. His wife is here with us today. And a good round for our wonderful speaker. Thank you all.
I've been asked to stand in to pray, so let's pray together here, folks. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this time and this opportunity of remembrance. I thank you for each one that took their time out of this day to share in this. We particularly are thankful for those who organized and participated in this ceremony. And Lord, we're ever so grateful for Peter, and we just thank you for his story of what I believe to be your providence, your grace, your timing, and your mercy. And so as we go from here, we just pray that we can all share in that same providence, grace, and mercy, and the love that binds us together. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Won't you join me? God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God